Welcome to the Mount Pleasant podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place.
This is the Mount Pleasant podcast. I'm your host, Brian Cleary, and all thanks to the great people at Mount Pleasant Magazine, I get the honor, the privilege of introducing you to Mount Pleasant, the people who make it such a special place to do business, to work, and even to live. We're introducing you to Mount Pleasant's best on the Mount Pleasant podcast. November 7th is Election Day. On the ballot in the town of Mount Pleasant, well, there's 4 council seats that are up for grabs and also 1 open commissioner seat for the Mount Pleasant Waterworks. And we thought, hey, this is important. We do and try to talk about the things and issues that are important to people in Mount Pleasant on the Mount Pleasant podcast, where the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive. So this morning, we're going to talk with one of the folks who's running for that commissioner seat. And we welcome Clay Duffie to the Mount Pleasant podcast. Clay, thanks so much for taking some time to join us today on the Mount Pleasant podcast.
Absolutely, Brian. It's a pleasure to be with you, man.
So the Commission of Waterworks, the public works for the town of Mount Pleasant, you've got Mayor Haney, who's a member of that. Also, there's always a member of council on it. It happens to be Jake Rambo right now, and then 5 folks who are elected. You're hoping to be that next person that's elected to the term. And the first question, I guess I should ask you, what made you decide? What made you think, I'm the guy for this job. I'm going to run?
Well, Brian, I was general manager of Mount Pleasant Waterworks for 32 years. And so I kind of know a little bit about water and know a little bit about the commission and our community and our customers. And so I retired a couple of years ago and, from the day-to-day management aspects as the general manager, but got to thinking about it. I've stayed involved with the state water plan and some other things, but the main thing was, with this knowledge and experience in networking, I felt like it would be a good opportunity for me to give back to the community. So I decided to step up and give back, and hopefully, my interaction with the commissioners will be helpful, and with the staff and the customers. So that's the main reason.
Step back a little bit if you can, and explain to people, because obviously you've had that role for 3 decades with the Waterworks. In your role as commissioner, what's going to be different from what you were doing prior to that when you were in charge?
Well, like I mentioned, the state water plan, as general manager, you can talk to the General Assembly and other elected officials, but it doesn't carry quite as much weight as when you're an elected official, talking peer to peer. And the state water plan is a really important plan for our state. It's the future for the water resource, our plan for the future for the next 50 years. And I've been an advisory member for that plan for the last 2.5 years. And so I've invested myself with that. And I would like to see that, carried to fruition through the General Assembly. It's important that our state General Assembly adopts that plan and makes that plan a working plan, not something that just sits on the shelf.
Obviously, this is something you have expertise in, you're pretty close to. Mm-hmm. I'm a resident of Mount Pleasant. Can you explain to me on a level that I can understand what that state water plan is and why it's important to me as a resident of Mount Pleasant?
Well, obviously, water is important, and having a sustainable, long-term source of water is really, really important. Nobody ever wants to run out of water or pay too much for water. And so, having a plan that will help sustain that resource and be sure that it's allocated properly to all the different users, water utilities being my primary concern, obviously. But there are other users, agriculture, industry, that have to share in that resource. And so we want to be sure that that's fairly balanced and ensure that no one group, takes all the water. And so it's really important for the customers to know that they have a reliable source of water, not only for their homes, but for their businesses.
This is where we introduce you to what's happening in Mount Pleasant, the movers, the shakers, the businesses, the people that make this town such a great place to live. I'm Brian Cleary. Thank you for joining me today on the Mount Pleasant podcast. Clay Duffie is with us today. He's on the ballot for one open seat that's on the commissioners for Mount Pleasant Waterworks. Clay, you've got 32 years experience as general manager and working with Waterworks. Let us know a little bit more about yourself. Obviously, a longtime Mount Pleasant resident.
Obviously been here in Mount for since 1989. Got here and just learned my way around before Hurricane Hugo came along. And so
wait. So we can blame you. We now know Clay comes to town, and here comes Hurricane Hugo. There you have it.
You're exactly right. But you know what? We never lost water service during Hugo or after Hugo. So I think we did a pretty good job. But I'm a Clemson graduate, engineering graduate. My father put me to painting fire hydrants in my hometown when I was 14 years old. So all I've ever known is water. And I feel like it's something that's just ingrained in me. And, I have a passion for it. I have a passion for our water environment. We want to be sure that water that we enjoy, we recreate in, we fish in, and have a good time in and around the water and here in our local area. We want to be sure we protect that marine environment. So that's what I'm passionate about, making sure these septic tanks that are failing, eliminated economically for the customer. And so that's a few things that, I'm a licensed charter captain. I take people fishing and enjoy the getting out and then sharing that in our water environment here locally. I'm a lecturer at Christ Our King Church and raised 4 kids here in the old village, and just love living here in Mount Pleasant.
I like that it's an honest, fair assessment of what's going on the Isle of Palms. Island Vibes.
Great newspaper by a great friend, and so glad he's published this because we really need it. It's impartial, and it's just a great paper.
Island Vibes, honest, sincere, and factual.
So excited about the new independent newspaper covering all the positive news on Isle of Palms. Thank you so much for this new publication. Very good, thanks.
Island Vibes rock!
Island Vibes is a deal.
You're listening to the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
Give me one tip. Come on, I want to go out and catch something good here. Where should I go, and what's my best thing that you would take me out fishing for?
Well, you know what they always say, that where are you fishing? I always say in the water. There's some good spots all around. No captain's going to give up all his secret spots. So,
it doesn't mean I can't ask, but you always
come go fishing with me, and I'll take you there. How about that?
All right, that sounds like a plan. So, Clay Duffie, you're very close, obviously, to the waterworks. You can go to their website, and there's an explanation of what it does. But kind of dumb it down for me. I'm a resident of Mount Pleasant. Why is the waterworks? What is it that the waterworks is doing for the community, and why is that important to me as a resident of Mount Pleasant?
Well, sure. Well, obviously, in a dense community, we have a lot of people and a lot of businesses compacted into a small area. Public utilities are very important, especially water and wastewater. The commission, they provide those services. They plan and build the facilities that are needed for growth, and make sure that those facilities are online and operational. The day somebody ties on, they want to be able to turn on the faucet and flush that toilet, and that doesn't happen just by accident. The commission spends a lot of money in planning ahead and building ahead so that the capacity is there in the water lines and sewer are available. And then they make sure they operate it properly. The commission has about $2 billion worth of assets in our area, and those assets need to be maintained into a state of readiness, especially like in an emergency like Hugo. So that's what the commission does. I mean, they help the customer. They help make sure that the customer is fairly billed, and they have to make sure they have revenue. That's important. You can't do anything without money. And so there's a lot of things going on in a water utility, and a lot of people don't realize it. I mean, there's 22 career paths in a utility, from management to customer service to chemistry to pump maintenance. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of opportunities, and so we're hoping that we can recruit enough people in the future, the young professionals, maintain those assets, because us old folks, we can't do that too well. We need young kids that coming in And so I will be supporting a mentoring program to bring in young professionals. So I'm looking forward to that.
So, Clay, obviously, as general manager, you dealt with a lot of different issues. You've talked about the state water plan. You were elected commissioner. If that happens, what are the one or two things beyond, obviously, the state water plan? You've talked about the importance of that. But what is it the Waterworks is doing right now? Where would you like to see their focus being as a commissioner?
Well, the commissioners set the budgets and they approve the capital improvements plan, and they set policies and ensure that we have good customer service to all the customers. There are several things that I want to be sure of. Number one is the sustaining our water supply. I mentioned that already. Eliminating failing septic tanks. With the rising tides coming up, the septic along our waterways are going to become inundated more often with the intense rainfall we have these days. Flooding in a coastal community is not good for septic tank operation. They fail a lot. And so if you want to protect water quality, you need to take care of the wastewater that's generated. You know, there's three sources of poop. You got pelicans, pets, and people. You can't do anything about the pelicans. Come on, they're going to poop in the water, and that you can't do anything about it. Hopefully people will take care of their dogs and cats and make sure that they clean up after them. So that's being responsible. So the only thing you can really do anything is about the people. And then the septic tanks that serve our community need to be eliminated and tied on to public service. And like I mentioned a minute ago about the workforce, having a strong force is really important. And to try to promote the opportunities that are available at a water utility and try to recruit more and more young professionals, because it's going to take it in the future.
Water is an important resource. We've got lots of them here in the town of Mount Pleasant. With Election Day coming up, there's a commissioner seat open. Clay Duffie is running for it, and he's our guest today on the Mount Pleasant podcast. Clay, in something like water, somebody like me, most people, probably 90% of the population, they turn the faucet on, they flush their toilet, it works, everything's fine for them. How much of a challenge is it then for you? You've got experience, obviously, as the general manager of the Waterworks, now running for commissioner. Is this something that's really on the voters' mind, do you think? It is, and should it be?
Well, that's an interesting question. Why vote for a water commissioner? Local elections have more impact on us than our state and federal elections and the governance that comes with the elected officials. So, and water being such an essential part of our life and daily life and our business operations, it's important to have a sound supply of water. And the commissioner's responsibility is to ensure that we have a sound, safe supply of drinking water. And to clean the wastewater up and put it back into the environment better than they found it, kind of thing. So, the role of a commissioner is very important. What a lot of people don't realize is that there are 16 public commissioners of public works in the state of South Carolina, and those are quite unique. They're elected bodies that are separate from the town government, and they're responsible for water and wastewater. In some cities, they're responsible for the electric and gas as well. And so commissioners of public works are kind of not an odd animal, but they are an apolitical animal, even though they are elected, commissioners. We try to stay, true to our task of running the utility efficiently and effectively and not get into too much politics. But at the end of the day, there are 16 commissioners of public works, and 6 of them happen to be here locally. The city of Charleston, Thomas Pritchard is running for re-election over there as chairman. You have Isle of Palms, you have Moncks Corner, you have Somerville, got Seabrook Island, and others around that. And so the Low Country has a plethora of commissioners of public works that serve probably over 500,000 people in the Low Country. And so voting for the elected officials that are in charge of making decisions relative to the water and utility, it's really important. And unfortunately, in these off election years, Brian, there's just not a lot of interest, and the turnout is typically very low. And and hopefully, podcasts like yours can help get the word out that, people need to show up and vote. It'll affect your water bill. I promise you.
Well, let me piggyback onto that, because probably as general manager, the thing that you heard the most, and maybe as commissioner, the thing you'll hear the most is, why is my water bill so high? What do you tell people when they ask you that?
Well, the commission's obligation is to make sure when you turn on that tap, there's plenty of water coming through that meter. Unfortunately, if you have a leak on your side of the meter, that meter is going to spin, and that water is essentially sold. And the wastewater obviously comes back. If it's a leaking toilet, you have to deal with the wastewater that a leaking toilet generates. So it's really important to conserve water, to use water wisely. The commission put in brand new meters a few years back when I was manager, and these meters can tell you how much water you use every 50 minutes. And there's a Water Smart program that you can sign up for that'll send you an alert. If you have a leak on your line and water's leaking out at more than 10 gallons an hour, they'll send you a text or an email and let you know, hey, you got a problem, Brian. You might want to get a plumber and check it out. But Commission also provides a service line care program where they help maintain the lines on your property out in the yard, from the meter to the house and from your sewer tap to the house, and for a very small fee. And that's a very, very economical way to maintain your lines on your property, so you don't have to have a big plumber bill if you do have a major leak. So, the commission provides a lot of different services, but it's always important for the customer to know, when you use electricity, you have to pay for it. When you use water, you have to pay for it. I can't take it back. I can't give you a rebate. I told one guy one day, he was really complaining about his sewer bill. He said that sewer bill is just way too high. It's way more than my water bill. I said, well, I got a plan for you. Next, I'll just charge you for the water, and you can just keep the sewer.
I don't want to know his response to that. We'll just move forward. So we see the town of Mount Pleasant continuing to expand, and we hear people going, wow, infrastructure is so important. Where we got to build more schools. We got to build more housing. That means more roads. What does that mean in terms of water and the growth we've seen here in the town of Mount Pleasant?
Well, we've had explosive growth, as you well know, over the last 3 decades, and it was a struggle to keep up with that growth. If you don't plan ahead, build ahead, and make sure it's ready for operation when people town, you're going to get in trouble. And so that was one of our main goals, was to keep up. And at this point, I'd say the commission's in pretty good shape. They have a master plan to be sure that the town's comprehensive plan and the utilities master plan, work together. And so that we plan for the growth and make sure that the utilities are available when the growth occurs. But fortunately, there's not a lot of land left for development in Mount Pleasant. We've just about put houses and businesses on just every developable piece of land that's out there. There'll be some redevelopment. Hopefully, there'll be some opportunities for economic development in some areas to build up our businesses here in business community here in Mount Pleasant. Because everybody argues about traffic. It's a thing, and it is a huge thing. And so if you can live, work, and play, without having to get in your car in that same community, that'd be important. So hopefully we can see some redevelopment in ways that help minimize, all the traffic that's out there.
I don't think you can understate what you said before about the importance of local elections. We need to get that turnout. We'll have 4 council seats and the 1 open commissioner seat. So Clay Duffie, November 7th is coming up. Election's going to happen. Why is it that I should cast my vote for commissioner for you?
Well, I would hope you would look at my record, the things we've accomplished over the years. We built the first reverse osmosis system in the state of South Carolina. And so the innovation that we brought, I'd like to continue that innovation at the commission. I think I have enough experience to be a dedicated and contributing member to commissioners, to work with them collectively and collaboratively. That's really important in government, that the board work together well. And those are, I think, I've invested, pretty much most of my adult life in this community, and I'd like to continue to support the community in any way I can. And I think being a water commissioner is one way I can do that.
And people shouldn't underestimate the importance, regardless of who's on the board, but the fact that this water situation, our water commission, is an important part of our community, correct?
It sure is. And, if you don't do anything but get out and vote, if you don't vote for me, please get out and vote. I would prefer you vote for me as water commissioner, but let's not be complacent and not, make use our rights as voters and to be sure you don't have anything to complain about if you vote. Well, I'll look at it. So
that's it. If you don't get out and vote, let's not hear the complaints. This is your opportunity to make a difference. November 7th, Clay Duffie is a candidate. You bring more than 3 decades of experience. And obviously, Clay, and I can't say this about a lot of people, but you've got a passion for water. It comes across.
Thank you. I really do. I mean, that's all I've ever done. So, and I love being out on the water, and, it's a good thing. And, it's just been part, I have water in my veins, not blood.
Elections are important. Local elections, as Clay said, extremely important. Please, November 7th, get out and vote for the candidate of your choice, but mostly get out and vote. And perhaps today we've introduced you to a candidate who will be getting your vote for commissioner with the Mount Pleasant Waterworks. Clay Duffie, our guest. I'm Brian Cleary. This is where the pages of Mount Pleasant Magazine come alive. It's the Mount Pleasant Podcast. Thank you for sharing your time today here with me and Clay Duffie.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for spending your time with the Mount Pleasant Podcast, your community, your podcast. Listen to past and future episodes at mountpleasantpodcast.com.